What's up guys, Asian here again with another theory crafting video. This time we're going to be talking about the stamina sorcerer. Specifically we're going to be talking about the best in slot monster helm for the stamina sorcerer. Now the old tried and true stamina monster helm for stamina DPS has been Velidreth's. You can see here one piece adds 129 weapon damage. Two piece, when you deal damage, you have a 20% chance to spawn 3 disease spores in front of you after 1 second that deal, in our case, 13,416 disease damage. The first enemy they hit, this effect can occur once every 9 seconds. Velidreth has been pretty much the gold standard for monster helms for stamina DPS. However, recently there has been a discovery that perhaps there is a second monster helm that can compete with Velidreth, at least on a stamina sorcerer, and that is Stormfist. Stormfist is easier to obtain than Velidreth, you just do it doing Vet Tempest Island compared to Vet Cradle of Shadows for Velidreth, so obviously a lot easier, a lot more accessible for most people who don't necessarily have groups that they trust to run Vet Cradle of Shadows with cleanly and quickly. So Stormfist here, the one piece adds 129 stamina recovery. It's always nice to have a little bit of extra stamina regen for some extra sustain. And for the two piece, when you deal damage, you have a 10% chance to create a Thunderfist to crush the enemy, dealing 2,046 shock damage every 1 second for 3 seconds to all enemies within 4 meters, and a final 10,800 physical damage when the fist closes. This effect can occur once every 8 seconds. So you have two monster helm sets now that are competing for each other. So why all of a sudden is Stormfist considered a potentially good alternative to Velidreth's? That's because of a special passive that only sorcerers have, and that's Implosion. When you deal shock or physical damage, you have a 6% chance to basically deal extra damage as long as your enemy is underneath 15% health. Shock if you deal shock damage, physical if you deal physical damage. So that's kind of why Stormfist is kind of thought to be a good competitor for Velidreth in terms of monster helms, because of this implosion passive that only sorcerers have access to. But now let's take a look at things. Let's just take a look at these sets kind of in isolation from anything else, really. Just kind of take a look at them as is. Velidreth adds 129 weapon damage, so you're going to hit hard with Velidreth's, but Stormfist adds 129 stamina recovery, which is basically increases your regen. However, with Stormfist you lose out on the extra weapon damage, so kind of gotta ask yourself, what do I want to give up? Do I want to give up weapon damage in return for some added regen, or do I want to give up regen for some added weapon damage? With the change to heavy attack builds now on a lot of stamina tunes, the answer for most people is probably going to end up being weapon damage, because you're getting enough regen back from your heavy attacks that you don't necessarily need that extra regen from Stormfist. And so now let's take a look at the proc chance for basically the DPS that each set can deal. So now we're going to take a couple assumptions here. For Velidreth, we're going to assume that only one disease spore hits the enemy. Obviously, since you have 3 disease spores, all 3 disease spores can hit, depending on how large your hitbox is. For example, Manticora, St. Olms, those hitboxes are large enough that you could, in theory, have all 3 disease spores hit the boss, and all 3 of them would be able to deal damage. So you'd be able to deal more damage that way. But just for comparisons, we're just going to take 1 disease spore. But on the other hand, you also have to consider you can also have no disease spores hit, because if you're in a fight that's very mobile or against a boss that's very mobile, you or the boss could actually move away from where the disease spores should hit before it actually does. So you could just waste a proc with no disease spores hitting the boss, and you basically just wasted that proc until you get a new one in the next 9 seconds. And so Stormfist kind of has its own weaknesses. The Thunderfist that it creates only affects enemies within 4 meters. So when we do our 2 comparison parses, you'll be able to see the Stormfist proc, and you'll see that 4 meters actually isn't all that big. So again, with bosses that are more mobile, you're not going to get the full damage of Stormfist. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But for right now, let's assume one disease spores hits the boss, and that the boss remains immobile basically and just stands there. Your tank's doing a good job, and all of the damage from Stormfist is hitting. We're also going to assume that Velidreth's and Stormfist, they both proc on cooldown, which is kind of unrealistic, but we'll go with it. So we're going to swap over to R, which is kind of my go-to calculator. So our Velidreth's hits for 13,416 damage. So if we divide that by 9 seconds, we have a DPS of 1490.6. Now, Stormfist does 2046 shock damage every 1 second for 3 seconds. So we have 2046 times 3. And then we need to add that extra physical damage proc at the end, which is 10,800. So we get 16,938. And divide that by 8 seconds. And so we can see here our DPS from Stormfist, assuming all of everything hits, of course, and every proc on cooldown, is actually significantly higher than Velidreth's. It's about 50% higher compared to Velidreth's. And now, however, we have to keep in mind that these are both proc sets. So each second has a chance to proc the set effect, assuming that it's not on that 9 or 8 second internal cooldown. So that's kind of dependent on a couple of things here. How many dots are we running on a stamsorc? Basically how many hits of damage are we getting for each second? Because both sets proc on any damage dealt. So we have Blood Craze, which is 1. We have Hurricane, which is 2. You have Caltrop, which is 3. Poison Injection 4. Endless Hail 5. Rearming Trap is 6. So we have a minimum of 6 dots running at one time. If you are using an Axe Bleed, you could have 7 with the Axe Bleed, and of course you also have to include your light and heavy attacks there as well. So let's just say we have 6 dots running at each second. Now, the formula for calculating out the probability of success for at least X number of successes in N number of trials it's known as an independent Bernoulli trial, so it's a special form of the binomial distribution. And the way we calculate this out is going to be 1 minus the quantity, 1 minus the probability of success, so for Velidreth it's 0.2, raised to the power of how many trials you're running. So in this case we have 6 dots running per second. So we have a 74% chance each second of Velidreth proccing. And now we can do the exact same formula again for Stormfist. 0.1, that's the probability of proccing, 6 chances. And we have a 46.8% chance of Stormfist proccing. That is a pretty big disparity there. So it's something that you kind of want to keep in mind. You have a much lower chance of proccing Stormfist, less than 50% chance of proccing Stormfist in a given second. So now we have to ask ourselves, well, how many seconds of dots do we need in order to more or less guarantee that we get a proc off? So we can apply the same formula here, except this time instead of 0.2 for Velidreth, we're going to be using 0.738. We'll round up. So let's say we are testing it for in 3 seconds. We have a 98% chance of it happening. In 2 seconds, we have a 93% chance of it happening. We can do the same thing for Stormfist. So we're going to round up again, so 0.469. In 3 seconds, we have 85% chance of a proc happening. In 2 seconds, we have a 72% chance. In 4 seconds, we have a 92% chance. So obviously, you can see here just from these calculations that Stormfist is going to take probably 3 to 4 seconds in order to get a 90% chance for a proc to occur. And for Velidreth, you're guaranteed a proc within the first 2 seconds. So clearly, Stormfist has about just under twice as you'll get about twice the chance of Velidreth proccing is approximately twice as much as Stormfist, as you can expect, 10% versus 20%. You can see here it's not exactly half. It's actually slightly less than half, but it's close enough that we can say it's a half chance, so to speak. So going back to ESO now. So now what we're going to do is we're going to actually test this in practice. It's all fine and dandy to do the math and things, but nothing will really tell us how things perform unless we do it in practice. So for this, we're just going to be using two-fanged snake, and which is Ophidian, with 2 daggers, precise with weapon damage on the offhand, infused with poison on the front hand, and a sharpened maelstrom bow with a double ravage health poison. And the only thing we're going to be changing is going to be Velidreth's or Stormfist. We have the exact same traits, exact same weights for each armor piece, so medium divine heads with stamina, and heavy divine shoulders with health. So we're just going to do 2 parses, one with Velidreth, one with Stormfist, and we're just going to compare them. Do keep in mind this is only 1 data point for each monster helm set, so we can't make a definitive conclusion, but the parsers should be able to tell us whether which one of them might actually be better, or if there's going to be a big disparity between them. So that's kind of what we're looking for. Is there a noticeable difference between the 2 sets? So we're going to go ahead and start to parse, and we'll figure out whether Stormfist can compete with Velidreth's. There we go, that is our Velidreth parse done. Just noticed that FCC counter is Countermetrics counter is a little bit wonky there. So we're going to get back our ultimate for this next parse, and we're just going to swap out Velidreth's for Stormfist. Do the exact same thing, exact same parse. And we're going to take a look at our combat metrics reports afterwards and compare the 2 parses. Let me swap. There we go. Alright, so here we go. This is parse with Stormfist. Alright, so there we go. That was our Stormfist parse. You kind of saw the Stormfist proc there. Basically, the radius that I was talking about, that 4-meter radius, is basically the size of that fist, so it's obviously not a very large radius. So that's kind of the weakness I was talking about. You need a mobile boss, or the tank needs to hold the boss very mobile in order to get the most effect out of Stormfist. So, taking a look at our DPS. This is the Stormfist parse here, about 35k. Let's see if we can find Stormfist. Stormfist right here and there. So this is the shock damage enchant, only 452, 1.3%. Add that to the 2.6 and you get about 3.9% DPS coming from Stormfist procs and about 1350 DPS all combined. But what we want to know is the implosion proc. Implosion's right here. 2%. So now we want to compare that to Velidreth's, which is this parse right here, about 34k. You can see here Implosion did about half as much in terms of percentage. You can go back over here. Implosion did 684 DPS with Stormfist and 411 with Velidreth, so about a 75% increase in DPS. So it seems like, at least on a mobile target, it's very important to add that qualifier, because again, if your boss is moving out of that fist, then there goes Stormfist's damage, and you can also argue there goes Velidreth's damage, but at least you can try to line up the spores as best you can while you're moving. You can't really do that with Stormfist. It's there or it's not. So it seems like Stormfist will outparse Velidreth's on a stationary target. Now on a moving target, like I said, your stings are going to be very different, because the bosses might move out of Stormfist proc, and likewise for Velidreth, it could move so none of your spores hit, in which case, who knows which one's actually going to end up better. It's not something that I can necessarily test on a target dummy, because I can't exactly have Stormfist not proc and not hit the dummy. So that's kind of what it is. Stormfist does seem to pull higher than Velidreth, but on the stamina sorcerer by about 1k or so. Again, this is only one data point. You'd have to collect a lot more data points to get an idea of what the overall picture actually is. But that's basically it. So even if the DPS is similar, it is something to keep in mind that Stormfist is easier to farm. It's only Tempest Island compared to Cradle of Shadows. An annoying dungeon, yes, but still a lot easier than Cradle. So I would recommend then that if you are thinking of rolling a Stamina Sorcerer, to maybe consider using Stormfist instead of Velidreth's as your monster helm of choice. So that's it for this video. Hope you found this to be pretty informative, and I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.